Once upon a time, Jim Henson and Frank Oz were just like you guys out there learning how to do this. Now, there is the benefit now of like YouTube, so then you can actually go and look up like Sesame and Bear in the Big Blue House and The Muppet Show and actually see exactly like, oh, this is how they do it. This is what's done.
Welcome back to Puppeteers. We're your hosts, Adam Krutinger
and Cameron Garrity.
And today we're talking to the one and only Noel MacNeal. Welcome to the show, Noel.
Woo.
I had no idea you looked like that when you did that voice. Hey!
That's right.
Well, Noel MacNeal, thank you so much for joining us today. For those who don't know, Noel is a longtime Muppet and Henson and all-around television puppeteer.
Which means I'm old, folks. I'm really old.
But you know him from Bear in the Big Blue House, his work on Eureeka's Castle. He is a regular over at the Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, and is just a wonderful person. We're looking forward to getting to know him. So, Noel MacNeal, welcome to Puppeteers.
Thank you. Nice little backdrop you got there with the puppets and the hardware. A lot of people don't realize like the hardware that goes into to make it, which is why your videos are so great. Like, yes, you will need a saw. Not just a saw. No, you will need a saw. You'll need screws.
Well, puppet building uses so many tools from so many different disciplines. It's like the one art form, I think, that kind of touches on everything because it is theater. You know, you are doing woodworking to an extent, especially if you're building sets for it. You're sewing. You're doing a little bit of everything. Sculpting,
you're making shoes.
Oh yeah.
Making shoes. Well, to be fair, you know, if you can go to like, you know, the American Girl store or that Build-A-Bear place and get a pair of shoes.
Totally.
You know what? People always say that. You know, I did a video on how to make clothes for a puppet, and I'd like to do more of those. But people always say in the comments, like, can't you just use kids' clothes? Can't you just use like a Build-A-Bear outfits? It's like you can do whatever you want. You can do, but you just better hope that you built your puppet to the shape of a kid, or you built your puppet to the shape of a Build-A-Bear. Other than that, it's like you got to build it to fit what you're building.
Exactly.
Whatever.
So, what are you working on right now? What's on the horizon for Noel MacNeal?
Let's see. The horizon today. Well, today is May 4th. May the 4th be with you. And one of the highlights of my day is like it's Free Comic Book Day. So I'm going to go out after this to my local comic book shop and get some free comics.
There you go.
Professionally speaking, got a couple of things coming up. There's, for instance, in June, there's this thing I work on with Peter Linz. We're co-instructors for this thing called Beyond the Sock, which is, yes, the commemorative mug that we gave out. And we do this every year in Denton, Texas, through the University of North Texas, and with Pasha Romanowski, a project puppet. So Peter and I show you all the secrets that we've known. It's not secrets, but pretty much the techniques we use for video puppetry that I learned from Jim Henson and Frank Oz, and we show everybody like it's the same techniques that we use with the Muppets, with Sesame Street, Bear, the Big Blue House, Eureeka's Castle, The Puzzle, all the shows we worked on. And you also get taught and learn and keep this professional puppet that Pasha Romanowski like shows you how to make. And each year, it's a different puppet. It's a different kind of puppet. Like the first year was rats. There was last year was cats. Another year was penguins. So what's the puppet going to be this year? Don't know.
That's a surprise and not a selling point, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And it's a week. It's to this year in 2019. It's from June 4th to June 8th. Oh. And you swap. Like in the morning you go with Pasha, or you come with me and Peter, and then in the afternoon you switch. And then Saturday, the last day, is like the big show. So everybody gets to do a little bit or a skit. And then there's this grand finale song that everybody does together with their puppets. And then you get to take the video home and show your friends with the commemorative T-shirt and your puppet. You get to keep the puppet.
How many students do they have at a time?
Well, this is year 7 of doing this.
Oh my God.
And yes. And actually, as of today, there's only a couple of spots left. So sign up now. Go to beyondthesock.com and just register because there's only like a couple of spots left. And then that's it till next year. So, and there's about like between 20 and 22 people. So there's only a couple of spots left. So, and we divide it so that like half and half. So it's fun. It's really good. I always call it like the start of summer. Like it's right after, Memorial Day. So it's like this great start of summer. It's like a little summer camp that you get. You get to be in Denton, Texas, which is a really great town.
It's got to be hot there that time of year, though.
It varied. There was one year where it was actually chilly, but normally it is warm to the point of hot.
Yeah.
And that's the nighttime. But yeah, so just according. But then the studio that we work in, we crank up the air conditioning because otherwise it gets so cold. So pretty much, if you do come, wear your tank top outside, but have a sweater when you come into the studio because you're going to get chilly. Yeah. And I sweat, so I tell them, turn off the air conditioning. So.
We were talking about Beyond the Sock when we had Peter Linz on before, too, and he was telling us that James Martin was the one who started it. Is that
yes?
That's who you work with, right?
He's Professor James Martin. He's the head of the audio video department at UNT, and he had this idea a few years ago of doing like a sort of a puppetry master class, and he was from he was originally from Jackson, Mississippi, and at the time, Peter and I were doing the last 2 seasons of Between the Lions in Jackson, Mississippi, and he knew about it, and he came by and he visited and he talked to us about this idea. We're like, yeah, okay, sure, yeah. And then we never heard of him for like about 3 or 4 years. And then all of a sudden it came up. So, okay, I got the money. It was like, oh, you were serious. Okay. Sure. Sure. Welcome to Texas. Sure. Okay. Why not? Yeah. So, but that was his idea to do this because he has his own like puppet project that he's been putting together himself. And
that's what I wonder. Because he's not a puppeteer himself, right?
No, he is not. And the times he's put on a couple of puppets, he's proven that.
But he's a very big fan of it, and he's a good director too. So
no, and it looks like such a wonderful setup because sometimes you'll take building classes, and it's wonderful. You get the puppet that you get to take home, and maybe you even do some monitor work. But we've seen photos and stuff of the sets that they build for you guys, and it really is this like wonderful intensive of like really being there, really feeling what it's like to be on a set and working with the whole cohort of performers. So it looks like such a great time, and I'm sure it's something you and Peter wish you were able to have when you were coming up.
Oh yeah, that's the thing, because the fact that we're able to do this for people is something. I mean, not just even just like the whole like camp and the fun aspect, but just actually somebody just like sitting down and like or standing up and showing you exactly like this is what you do, this is the angle. We didn't have that. We had to literally learn as we went along. I had to watch Jim and Frank and Jerry and Richard and really like see what they were doing and then try it out. And so the first time I had to do it, I had to go overseas with for Sesame International because of the international versions of Sesame Street. And I had to sort of audition and teach puppeteers for this new Sesame Street how to do it. And I really had to sit down and think, well, how do I break this down? How do I like actually explain this? And then over time, it's just become like so easy to do it. So yes, we wish we had this when we were young, but now they have the opportunity to learn from us.
Yeah, and not only I argue like it's kind of something you have to do in order to try to get into the industry now. Like way back when like Jim Henson and stuff, like that's how people learn. They did learn by being on set and stuff. But now if you want to try to be on a show or something now, you have to walk in with those skills. They're not going to train you on the job like it used to be. It's a different world now.
And if you want to have like fun, like go to like YouTube, which I call like the video dresser drawer of the world. You just like type in Sesame Ernie Bert, like season 1, and you'll see Jim and Frank doing Ernie and Bert. And let me tell you, their skill levels are not the same skill levels that they eventually got. Yeah. But the fact that their characters and their relationship was so solid, you don't care. But it's not that really crisp, clean, sharp manipulation that we're all used to, because they were also learning as they went along, like what worked and what didn't work, because nobody showed them. Yeah. So once upon a time, Jim Henson and Frank Oz were just like you guys out there learning how to do this. Now, there is the benefit now of like YouTube, so then you can actually go and look up like Sesame and Bear in the Big Blue House and The Muppet Show and actually see exactly like, oh, this is how they do it. And this is what's done. But to actually somebody show you, no, Jim and Frank just like learned as they went along and got better at it, thank God.
Perfected it, I'd say too.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They perfected it. So it's like, oh yeah, this works much better. Yes.
Sure.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, we look forward to seeing all the photos from Beyond the Sock and stuff, and that's gonna be awesome.
Yeah. Definitely.
Oh yeah, it's like there's a great little like photo and also video like they do during the week. So it shows you like this is day 1, this is day 2. So it's like it helps promote, and also just it's also a fun, nice little record of like, see, you could be doing this. Come, you go to YouTube and go to Beyond the Sock, and you can see all the stuff that has been done over the years and the different sets. Traditionally, the sets don't match the puppets, which is wonderful. It's great. It's absolutely awesome. And it's, so it's like, I think the closest we ever had was the year 1. It was like a sewer set, and then there were rats. And then after that, it just didn't make sense anymore. So it was just like, no, it's like, forget it.
Cats in space, why not?
yeah, why not? Yeah, it was like we had a starship, and what was the puppet that year? I forget what it was, but it's like it just made no sense to have like these characters on a starship. So it's like, yeah.
Okay.
So before you were sitting around the set watching Jim Henson and Frank Oz and all that sort of stuff, what kind of kid were you? What were your sort of influences that got you to the world of puppetry?
It was, well, when I was growing up, there were a lot more puppet shows on television than there are now. So, I grew up watching Captain Kangaroo, and pretty much everybody I'm about to mention, again, you can go to YouTube, you can Google it. But there was a Captain Kangaroo, and Cosmo Allegretti did Mr. Moose and Bunny Rabbit. There was a female puppeteer named Sherry Lewis. And so she was a ventriloquist, and she had this little sock puppet named Lamb Chop. There was Paul Winchell, and he was a ventriloquist, and he had this local show called Winchell Mahoney Time with his ventriloquist dummies, Jerry Mahoney and Knucklehead Smith. And by the way, Paul Winchell, here's a little fun fact, he helped create the artificial heart.
Yeah.
So puppetry can save lives.
I love telling people that fun fact too.
Yeah, exactly. And as well as going on to be the original voice of Tigger for Winnie the Pooh, as well as other Hanna-Barbera cartoons, which were great. And so I grew up like watching these shows. And then when I was about 7 years old, one Sunday night, there was on PBS, Channel 13 here, there was a show, half-hour show, and it was about this new show for kids coming on tomorrow morning, Monday. And it was a half-hour show, and it was hosted by 2 puppets. And it was 2 puppets I had never seen before, because normally puppets were like carved out of wood or made of paper mache or like a sock puppet or a ventriloquist dummy. But these 2 were so unusual because their mouths moved in time to what they were saying. And one puppet's head was kind of like a football, and the other one was kind of like the head of like a banana. And their names were Ernie and Bert. And they were talking about this brand new show coming on the next day called Sesame Street. And I was, beyond the age of Sesame Street, and I was 7, but I still watched it because I wanted to watch the Muppets. And when I saw Big Bird for the very first time, it just blew me away because this was a puppet that could actually walk around. It wasn't hiding behind anything. It could actually walk around and like walk up to people. And here's another fun thing. Go to YouTube, Google Sesame Street Big Bird Season 1, and you will be frightened by what you see. Because this is not the Big Bird. Again, the Big Bird we're all used to. The lovely bird with the fruit. No. Yeah. Google this. Google this. This is like roadkill teaching you the number 5.
That's right.
And then if you want nightmares on the League of the Conjuring, type in Snuffy's first appearance.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
And again, he evolved too, physically. But yeah, like I saw, and then so all through my childhood, I was watching like Sesame Street, and the Muppets did these great specials called Hey Cinderella and the Frog Prince and the Bremerton Musicians and the Great Santa Claus Switch. And then when I was in high school, that's when they started doing the Muppet Show. And it was here in New York, it was Monday 7:30, and I made sure like all my homework was done. I watched and like watched the Muppet Show all those years. And so because of that, that's when in high school, when it was time to decide like what college to go to, what I wanted to be, I thought, well, this guy Jim Henson's doing it. He's got all these people following him, so maybe I could do it too. So I went and did research the old-fashioned way. I went to the library, which is still around, by the way. It's like Barnes & Noble, but it's free. And I did all the research, and I found at that time there were 2 schools. One here in Brooklyn, New York, called Pratt Institute, that had a theater department. And within the theater department was a puppetry program. And then another school that was in Connecticut, through the University of Storrs, Connecticut. And they had a 4-year puppetry program, which they still do to this day. You can get your master's degree in puppetry in UConn if you wanted to. So then I had everything laid out. Now, I was going to present it to my mom. My mom was a single mom because my dad walked out on us when he was 18 months old and even faked his death to get out of alimony. And that's a whole other podcast, a potential Lifetime movie. And so and she worked 2 jobs in order to put me through private school, because when it was time to go to junior high and high school, I grew up in Central Harlem, and schools was either the school where the kid got stabbed or the school where the kid got shot. So she sent me downtown to Rhodes Prep School. So I'm going to this single mom working 2 jobs, taking care of me, her mother and uncle in the same apartment. And I said, okay, Mom, I know what I want to be, a puppeteer. And I waited.
But I wanted you to be successful, honey.
And I, held my breath. And she said, okay, what do we have to do? And I said, oh, okay, well, there's this school in New York and this school in Connecticut. Okay, what do we have to do? Well, they have to fill out this form for this and this form for that. Okay, what do we have to do? That's all she kept saying, guys, the entire time. Because she told me growing up, don't get a job, get a career. And so she just supported me. And at the end of all this, she said, and you know what? If tomorrow you decided you want to be a lumberjack, we'll figure out how to do that too. So it really helps having somebody support you at that point in your life. Yeah. And here I am.
Wow. So where'd you end up going?
Oh, yes. So I ended up going to Pratt Institute here in Brooklyn. And within the theater department was that puppetry program. Now, I was taught by an instructor named Kermit Love, and he was one of the designers and builders for the Muppets. In fact, he designed and built Big Bird and Snuffy. And no, the frog was not named after him. It's just one of those freaky coincidences that fate likes to throw at you. So I started college at Pratt, and then during the summer, I would work at his workshop on Great Jones Streets in New York. And my summer job was feathering Big Bird because feathers fall off.
Yeah.
And so with no air conditioning in the middle of like July and August, and that back room, just taking a box of yellow dyed turkey feathers and taking an iron and like steaming them so that they curl up, making a little pile, taking a hot glue gun and taking those little rubber tips so you don't burn your fingers. Ha. And then 1. 2, yes, that's how you feather Big Bird. Wow. Yes.
Oh no air conditioning and no W-2s either.
Nope, not at all.
Actually, do you mind? Because I think eventually I want to make the Kermit Love Chronicles, because we've had we've had a handful of people, and I always try to have them describe Kermit Love to us, and or maybe one of your favorite stories about him, if you don't mind.
Oh, see. Kermit was a very interesting man. It's like he had this affected English accent, even though he was born in like New Jersey, we found out. And he had like white hair and a white beard. And people often ask me like, how old is he? And I would always joke, oh, somewhere between God and dirt. So it's just that we just didn't know. But he worked, he was a costumer. He worked with George Balanchine, he worked with General Robbins, with Agnes DeMille. I mean, he had this whole background in costuming. He he costumed, helped costume like Divine. It's like, for those of you out there, like Google Divine.
Wow. Holy cow, really?
Exactly. So, I mean, he had this whole, so that's why with Big Bird and Snuffy and the other characters like Thog, like the Muppet Show, they had these great understructures because it came from like building, hoop skirts and figuring out how to make like authentic looking costumes that still dancers could move in. So he just applied that for making these incredible creatures, but still be able to be puppeteered, to be moved. Because you get, Adam, you'll get, puppets that are made by like people who really shouldn't be allowed to vote or drive. So they're not really puppets as much as statues stuck on a pole that you have to somehow figure out how to move.
Yeah.
So, but he knew how to do that, and so he was very good at that. But he knew everybody. I mean, literally, you could just name somebody and he would know them. One of the best stories was that at the time when I first started on Sesame Street, because that was the thing. After I graduated, I started on Sesame Street, and I was his assistant. So I was the wrangler. I didn't start puppeteering. I was the wrangler, which is the person who takes care of the puppets. And so he went out early to lunch because he had a business meeting at the Russian tea room, and there was a bit with right after lunch. There was a bit with Big Bird, and Tony Danza was the guest star, and Carol Spinney's wife, Debbie, was with me, and we're watching this, and it's a really funny bit. Again, you can look it up. So then Kermit finally comes back from lunch. We ask him, like, how was, like, the Russian tea room and all that? And he was like, wonderful. And as he passed by, he also noticed, like, across the room, it was Barbara. And I waved to her, and I said, do you mean Barbara Streisand? And he said, yes. And I said, I said, I bet you probably told her, don't ever get your nose fixed. And he said, that's right. I don't laugh anymore, they would have fell out of my head. But see, that was Kermit. So it was
I'm still getting over him dressing Divine. Like that to me, that kind of explains the first look of Big Bird and Snuffy a little bit. How scary they were. I wonder if there's any connection to that, especially Snuffy's eyes. Wow.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's like don't go there, kids. Yes, but he was quite a character. So he was, and his creations live on, like Big Bird and Snuffy and those characters. So. Yeah, and he actually had a character on Sesame Street. He was Willie the Hot Dog Man, and so he
performed it.
Huh?
He performed it.
It was
he performed it. Yes, he was.
Oh, I'm sorry. Human. Oh, that's right. We did talk about.
He was a human, not a puppet.
Okay. I'm sorry. I was getting confused.
No. He was a human, Willie the Hot Dog Man, and then our floor manager Chet O'Brien. He was Mr. McIntosh, and he had a human character, and he had like the fruit stand. So it was great giving these people. That's what's so great about Sesame. Every now and then you will become like a background person. So I've done it more than once where I've been in the background, like sitting at a table or standing in the crowd. Or the best was when we did the Sesame movie, the first one, Follow That Bird. And at the end of the movie, the premise is that there's this society, the Feathered Friends Society, and they want to put birds in proper bird families. And they assigned Big Bird this family of dodos in Ocean View, Illinois, but he doesn't like it, so he runs away. So the social worker keeps chasing him down to try and bring him back. She finally catches up with him on Sesame Street and wants to take him back. But Maria says, we have all kinds here. He has a family, not just birds. And that's when the camera does this whole 360 of like all the people and characters on Sesame Street. Well, they didn't hire enough human extras that day. So it's this unintentional cameo of pretty much people who worked on the film.
Right.
So like the subtitles really is, we have all kinds. We have people, we have kids, we have birds, we have Carol Spinney's wife, we have Noel, we have Noel's mom, we have the grip, we have the caterer, we have, the set photographer, the director of cinematography, there's the entire lighting department, there's the receptionist. It's like all these people who worked on the movie are in the background.
Wow.
That's hysterical.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So when you were at Pratt, is that did you interact with Jim Krupa while you were there?
I did.
Chance? Okay.
Yeah, Jim Krupa, that was his senior year and my freshman year. And so that first puppetry class, that's where I met Jim for the first time.
Yeah.
And Jim always did like a puppet show like every year. So I got to be in his like last puppet project on stage. And it was great. It was like this, it's kind of like a little mini Muppet show. It was like a review. And we had all these birds to Rock and Robin. And there was this great piece to the classical water piece from the composer I can't think of, but yeah, it was great. It was against black, so we got to wear all blacks. And I also then I got to know Jim more because Jim worked at Kermit's workshop along with Matt Stoddard and John Orberg and Bob Marty. And then eventually Kermit closed down the shop, but Jim, Matt, and John was so good that they wanted to start their own business, so they did. So for many years, they had 3 design studios. And that's where we did, in the mid 80s was like great for puppets. It was like, there's always puppets, like the TV commercials. There was the color forms actually had video. And so we did the color form videos, and which used puppets. And then they did the special effects for the movie Little Monsters, starring Howie Mandel and Fred Savage. And then that's when they told me that Nickelodeon had contacted them and they wanted to do this new kids show. And they were asked to, they got to do the puppets. And they said, no, would you be interested in being one of the puppeteers? We're like, sure. And so we did this pilot, this little like 5-10 minute pilot for Eureeka's Castle. And I got to be Magellan and pretty much used all those tricks and tips that I learned from Carol doing Big Bird to do Magellan. Because again, nobody taught me. I just looked and picked up and like experimented like, how would Carol do this pretty much? And so, yeah, so we did a lot of stuff together after that, after Pratt.
That's great. Now, I think we jumped over something there because you just mentioned that you had worked with Carol on Big Bird a little bit. Was that something?
I was his wrangler. So when Big Bird needed to be on camera, I would bring Big Bird over and like put it on top of camera. The way Big Bird works at this point, everybody knows, is like you wear the feet and legs like a pair of pants, and then the rest of him is on this stand. You just take him off the stand and you just slip him over, and that's when Carol puts his arm up and then puts his left arm into the left wing. And then when he's done, you just take it off again. So I would be Carol's wrangler and also wrangle Snuffy, which is 2 people.
Right.
Just it's Marty Robinson and Bryant Young in the back. And so I'm taking care of him. So I got to work on Sesame. I got to work on the Sesame special that's called Don't Eat the Pictures. And it's Sesame Street gets locked in the Metropolitan Museum of Art overnight. And that was a great special because most of it was shot at night at the Metropolitan Museum, which is really creepy at night, let me tell you. And
we had Martin Robinson on a couple months ago, and he was saying how you guys just had the run of the place.
Oh yeah,
that's right. Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
Anywhere. Yeah, it's like the joke is like Paul Dooley, the actor, he plays like the security guard at night. So it's like, it was always funny that this one guard is in charge of the entire museum. But then it kind of felt that way because we really could just wander off into these different rooms and just look at the art without any interruption whatsoever. And for a couple of weeks, I also got to do my first show outside of Sesame Street was The Great Space Coaster. And I got to take over the character of Knock Knock, who was this little pink bird, because John Lovelady, the puppeteer, had left to do the NBC series Mr. Smith Goes to Washington about a talking orangutan who gets elected to Congress, which seemed ludicrous at the time, but actually makes perfect sense and would be preferable to what's happening right now. So I got to do that. So then I remember a couple of days where I would like work at Sesame at night at the museum. And then as soon as we wrapped in the morning, like 8 o'clock in the morning, I would have to take the bus and go downtown and be on set for Space Coaster by 9 o'clock in order to do Knock Knock and assist. So that was burning both candles for about a week, which was very interesting. But, you know, when you're in your early 20s, you can do things like this. So
For the sake of the craft.
yeah, exactly.
So then when jumping back to Eureeka's Castle, when you guys were getting that started, how much did that show change from that initial 5-minute pilot demo to the show proper getting picked up and such, or was it pretty much locked?
It was pretty much like we all, like the characters we did, that's the characters that we did. And so it didn't really change that much. When we did the first season, I started to see how things worked and the different dynamics that could be explored. So then that's when I became a writer for the second season and started to write for the show, which was really fun. The head writer was a gentleman named Jovial Bob Stein, but that was his moniker for the show because his author name is R.L. Stein. Yes.
That one.
Goosebumps.
Yeah, exactly. So so I got to know him. And so, yeah, working the second season, I got to write for the show, which was really fun. And just like have the different dynamics, which was really great. And it was a great group of puppeteers and myself, Jim Krupa, Cheryl Blaylock, Brian Meal, Lynn Hippen, and Pam Arciero. And it was great. It was wonderful.
That's great. So then at that point, I mean, that just really opened the floodgates, I feel like, because that whole, as you were saying, the late 80s, early 90s was just such a boon for puppetry because you have the puzzle place and you had, obviously Bear came not too long after that. Between the Lions. Yeah. So, I mean, it just must have been.
And the Legos window. A lot of people don't remember the Legos window. I didn't work on the Legos window.
No, I absolutely remember this. I wasn't sure if you had worked on that or not, but yeah.
No, I did. Oh I knew those puppeteers and they worked on it, and it was a great show. It was a really sweet show, and like Pam worked on it, and Tim Lagasse worked on it as well. Mr. Chef, I love Tim Lagasse's characters because it's like Mr. Chef was just like this kind of this odd character. It's like because he had this like great voice he did that you really couldn't do today if you really wanted to. That was so great with Eureeka's Castle. It was just like you had the dragon and the bat and the wizard and then you had Mr. Knack, which is Brian Meal,
yeah.
And Richard Hunt asked Brian, like, what's up with the East Indian aviator in the middle of this puppet show? Because Mr. Knack had that kind of voice that he did. I loved Mr. Knack so much. It was great. So, yeah. And then on Between the Lions, like, Tim did Artie Smarty Pants, which was because you had like the lions and you had Buster Field, which was a beautiful puppet, the statue. But then you had Artie Smarty Pants, who was just so bizarre. It was wonderful.
Right. Yeah, it was a level of like experimentation and just a different kind of feel that you would get on other shows. And someone like Tim is so great because he talks so quickly. It's just so fast. He exists in this other kind of time zone that you're just spellbound by what he's able to do.
I got to work with him more on Ubi, which was the show for Nickelodeon that he and I worked on along with Tyler Bunch and Stephanie Bruzzo. And Ubi was great because it was our bare hands with these glass eyes on top. Like, that's it. I tell people, if it's like, that's the puppet. Your bare hands and glass eyes. And if you're lucky, they will pay you to do this. And so like, that was it. And he spoke only 1 or 2 words at a time. And yet it worked. It was great. I heard that our biggest fan base, because it used to be on during the day, and then they started putting it on in the middle of the night. And then I heard that our biggest fan base became the youth coming home after, being out carousing and often very relaxed and which kind of just zone out watching the talking hands.
I think that happens to a lot of kids shows and cartoons. I think I've heard that.
Yes, exactly. Like that sort of trip. Well, then there's some cartoons and kids show you wonder, like, what were the people on when they created it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, the classic, when I was growing up, there was like the City Marty Krofft shows. So like H.R. Puff and stuff. And just like, what were you people on when you created Living Island?
That's right.
And like the talking mushrooms.
Right. Even like the old McDonald land stuff was just like so bizarre, and the just your food talking to you and all that kind of weird stuff.
Oh yeah. In
Yeah.
fact, yeah, the old McDonald land kind of thing. They actually had to like stop doing that because it kind of infringed on the whole HR Puffin stuff thing. So they actually had to stop doing that for a bit. It's like, Google it, kids. When in doubt, Google it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Sid and Marty Krofft because it was just it's like that Lidsville. It's like Talking Hats, like, and Charles Nelson Riley in his like most iconic role as Hoodoo. Yes, and it's like the Bugaloos. But then there was like The Land of the Lost, which was a really good show. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I mean, it was like pretty dramatic for a kid, and oftentimes kind of like disturbing, like to watch. And so I really enjoyed that. And they did not do it justice with that movie that came out a few years ago. We won't mention that, but the original Land, not the reboot they did back in like the late 80s, 90s, not that either. Like the original Land of the Lost was great. That was awesome.
Now, when you were doing a lot of those other sort of Nickelodeon Disney properties in the 90s, were you still working Sesame as well? Like what was that balance of where you were spending your time?
It was like I was always like always like a participant or just like a background player for Sesame. So I wasn't like on there all the time or had a major role. So I could do like the puzzle plays. The first season it was 6 months in Los Angeles in 1994, and it premiered in 1995. But that first season was like 6 months, and the second season was 3 months. So since I wasn't that heavily involved with Sesame Street, I could go off and do these things. But then when they would have like big crowd scenes or specials, then I would get called in and do stuff. Or occasionally, the parade, which is always fun on Thanksgiving morning. Like when it's not raining, it's really great. So there was the year that there was a brand new float. It was black and white, almost as if it was drawn, and it was raining. It was really, really raining. And by the time it got to Macy's and Herald Square and pulled around the corner to get off, like the puppet's hands were black because the paint
and
it was like dripping on. And now here's the thing that people do not believe, but it's true. The puppets you see on the Thanksgiving Day parade are the same puppets from the show. It's not a separate set of puppets. It's the same puppets. You'd think they would have a second set for this kind of thing. No, it's the same puppets. Wow. So that's when, and Jim Martin was there that year. He helped take the puppets back to the Henson shop and like hand wash like the paint out of the puppets' hands and off their faces. So,
oh gosh,
yes. So then doing occasional things like that was always good.
And you're still doing that, are you?
Yeah, off and on. I get to do it like every now and then. I get to do the parade. I'm involved with the I don't know if you heard, but apparently Sesame Street's having an anniversary. It's very low key. And
I thought I heard something about that.
Yeah, something about it. Yeah, they really should get on social media more and really promote it. So for the 50th anniversary, there's this whole thing where the characters, including Big Bird, are going around doing like a road tour. So I'm involved in that. And so not only puppeteering, but also I get to direct a couple of them, so which is really cool.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. Still have my, my time every now and then on the happiest street on earth.
Yeah. Now, this might be something that we have to dance around, but are these shows that you guys are doing at all similar to some of the live Muppet shows that happened last year?
Oh, no, not at all. This is strictly for, it's going to be edited and strictly for this primetime special that's coming out.
Oh, I see. I wasn't sure if the road trips were.
Oh, no. They're just called road trips because they're actually getting out of Sesame Street and going to other parts of the country, like Denver, Chicago, Seattle, Los Angeles. But the shows you were talking about, for those of you out there, I'm also every now and then I get to work with the Muppets, and so we did 2 shows, one in 2017 at the Hollywood Bowl, and one last year at the O2, which is this huge arena in London, and pretty much it was the Muppet Show live, and they were huge successes. And when it's all said and done, it just keeps proving that this is what people want. We just want the Muppet Show. We don't want like some weird sick parody sitcom. We want the Muppet Show. Yeah. And it was sold out crowds. Like all the performances for both venues were sold out. It was great. It was wonderful. So yeah, but so that was a live show, and this is going to be recorded for the Sesame stuff's going to be recorded for a special.
Very cool. Yeah, well, we'd love to talk about Bear in the Big Blue House a little bit, because that just seemed like, I mean, it was such a wonderful show, and certainly I think the character that you're most identified with. How did that show first fall on your radar?
It was I got
called in to audition for a show that it was actually going to be a game show that was being developed by Mitchell Kriegman, who was the guy who did Clarissa Explains It All, and now he was had this development contract, this deal with the Jim Henson Company, and so it was like this game show where it was like this giant alien was like the MC, and it was for kids, kind of like Double Dare meets Little Shop of Horrors. And I was inside this puppet, and I'm just kept sitting there thinking, well, why didn't you just get Marty Robinson to do this? Because it's just like Audrey 2, because Marty designed and created Audrey 2 for the original show. But I did it, and then I just left. And that was like around 11 o'clock in the morning. Then around a little after 4 o'clock, I got a phone call and said, Noel, could you come back and audition for this other character for this other show? And I was like, okay, sure. So then they faxed me the sides and the drawing. And it was this black and white sketch that Paul and Draco had done of this bear and these little characters and the moon behind him. And I saw the sides, like, oh, okay, this looks kind of fun. And I lived on the Upper East Side, and the Henson Studios were on the Upper East Side at the time. So I just took a cab ride down, like 20 minutes. I was looking over in the cab. And then I got out, went inside, and Peter Van Roden, who was an executive there at the time, he came up to me and said, use your own voice. And I said, what? I said, but we're the Muppets. We don't do that. He said, no, use your own voice. Because he explained to me the premise of Bear was that it was to be a show that parents and kids could watch together. So they just wanted, rather, for a large character, they wanted to go the opposite route. And that was another large character at the time. And just have a sort of normal, just like soothing, calm kind of voice to help the kids at home navigate through Bear's day, just like his little friends were. So I was like, okay. So I got inside the understructure, which was like this hooped understructure and this foam head. And as soon as I got inside, it felt great. It's like, wow, this is really cool. And then I realized, wait a minute. No, it's almost 5 o'clock. This is a courtesy call. They just want to like make sure they cover all their bases. It's like, screw it. I'm just going to have fun. And that's what I did. So I just had fun. And when it said like, in the script that, Bear like sniffs the camera, that's when I decided I was just going to jam the nose all the way in and then pull it back out again. And when you hold something up the camera, I was going to like just hold it really close and just have fun, just like run back and forth and every now and then I tried to slip into a character voice. They was like, no, keep using your own voice. I was like, okay. And then after that, I didn't think about it and I just went home. And then that Monday, this was a Friday, Monday around 6 o'clock, that's when I got the phone call. And they said, Noel's like, we'd like you to be Bear. And I was like, what? It's like, yes.
And was this audition only for that character, or were they also use that audition to cast some of the other characters as well? Did you use other puppets?
I don't know. The only puppet I saw there was Bear, so I didn't know like the other puppets. It was just for Bear, so it was just that was it. So, and then that weekend, like the next day, that Saturday, I got a phone call from my buddy, and he said that a mutual friend of ours was in a a cappella competition over on the West Side. and you want to go see Wes and his group? And I was like, sure. He also invited an old friend of his who had moved back into town, Susan, and she came. And so we went to this restaurant. Everybody was there except this person named Susan, so I went to the bathroom. Then Susan came in. Everybody was there that she didn't know, except for Mike. But then she said Noel was in the bathroom. And so Susan had heard about me all these years because Mike had come to me to visit like Sesame and the puzzle place. And so he would tell Susan all about my puppet adventures. But this was back with just email, so there was no like photographs or anything. So she already had it like in her mind what Noel probably was. Probably somebody, with some sort of like facial hair, probably a goatee, maybe a ponytail, wearing some sort of like a bit like
beard
kind of.
Then I came out and it's like, this is Noel, and I saw her, and for both of us it was like, oh, hi. So I made sure to sit next to her at the performance, and then the next day we had a mutual friend's engagement party, and we went. And then at the end of that, that's when I asked for her number. It's like, could I call you sometimes and go out? And so we did, and she is now my wife.
Wow.
So I'm like,
that's a big weekend.
Yeah. Holy cow.
Exactly. So so Friday I auditioned for Bear. Saturday I met Susan. Sunday got to hang out with Susan again, got her number. Monday I got Bear, and then later that week started dating Susan.
So it's like, holy, a pivotal weekend of your whole life. Oh my gosh. Wow.
Susan is also the author of the Maggie Hope mystery, starting with Mr. Churchill's Secretary.
That's right. Yeah. That's amazing.
Number one in the series, and the latest one is The Prisoner in the Castle, now available. Yes, this is a shameless plug, but not good.
No.
She actually went to high school right up the street from where I went to high school, because we're in Buffalo.
Yeah.
So.
Susan is a proud Buffalonian. So
that's right. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh yeah. Yeah, so so Susan's from Buffalo. So we always kid like we're from New York, but we're just from like the opposite ends. So
right.
Right, she's from Buffalo, and I'm from the Sodom and Gomorrah by the Hudson. So
that's right. Yeah. And she was also the one who inspired you to create your book as well, right?
Yes, exactly. This one.
10-minute puppets, right? There it is.
You said you like visuals, so here they are. So it's like 10-minute puppets, which you can get on Amazon.com, and also like this one, Box. It's like how-to books. But this one, she said, you know how to be a puppeteer, you know how to be a dad. Why don't you put them together and show people how easy and inexpensive puppets and puppet making can be? But she said, don't make it crafty. Make it for people like me. You are not married to Martha Stewart. So that's why this book is like got easy, simple stuff. Even like in the back, like templates you can cut out. And you can even go to my website and like download more of the templates. And I'm really proud of it. It's a cool book. At that time, my son Matt and his friends, back when they were like preschool. He is now 14 going on 42. But what's nice is also like the introduction. I asked a lot of my puppeteering friends to contribute. So the introduction is from Jerry Nelson. There's advice about storytelling from Frank Oz. There's advice about doing character voices from Fran Brill and other people like Paul McGinnis and John Tartaglia. And so you're getting like this whole, like, not just how to make a puppet quick and easy, but also what to do after that and how to have fun with it. So I'm proud of this book.
Yeah, that's awesome. Really if people want it, I put a link to the book in the description as well, so you can check it out there. Right.
Growing up, it's all down there.
Yeah, and I've gone on to
done appearances at schools and libraries and Comic-Cons. Comic-Cons have been fun to go to and meet people who have been fans of the show. So of Bear, but also other shows as well.
Yeah.
So.
And when you go to those Comic-Cons, you have a version of Bear that was built by James Whittle, correct?
I do. Which I do happen to have here if you want to see it.
Oh boy.
Here we go.
This is it, kids. Yes. It's like, and I always love on Twitter, it's like people saying, you should bring back Bear in the Big Blue House. Like, well, if it was up to me.
Yeah.
It never would have left. So really, you're asking the wrong person. You should really tweet at Walt Disney Company and ask them. So I was like, hi there. Gotta shake me out. There we go. So yes, I'm not so much bear because I'm kind of littler, so I'm more like cub. So, but yes, this is me, and that was built by James Voital Jr. of like Puppet Disaster. If you go to Puppet Disaster, and you can see all the stuff that James has done. And James is awesome because this was for Haley Jenkins and Paul McGinnis's wedding, and Paul asked, like, would you and Peter and Tyler do a song from Bear in the Big Blue House? So I thought, well, it'd be nice if we could actually do it with puppets. So I got this fur, and I asked James, because James built like the original bear head. That's right. And so he had a patent and all that. And going back and forth until finally James said, no, just give me the fur. I'll just do it. Just give it to me. And he just really just like knocked this out in no time flat. And ta-da!
Yeah, it's great. I can't wait. I look forward to having James on the podcast. I look forward to talking to him. Yeah. Oh, yeah, he's awesome. And that's one thing I've been wondering. How did you first connect with James? How did you guys start to become friends and working on things?
I met James through Bear, because he made Bear, like the original head, because he was like working at the Henson Workshop at the time. And then I reconnected with him again because I did these shows for the Bronx Zoo here in New York, Boo at the Zoo, for the Halloween show. And he was connected at the time with a puppetry shop here called Puppet Kitchen with Michael Schupak. And they were building the puppets for me. And James was a puppeteer too. So I thought, oh, would you like to work on it with me? So that first show was me and James and Arlie Chadwick. And we did the show. And then he like helped build the puppets ever since then. And ever since then, he is just, James is one of those people who he will put 125% into whatever he does, even if he's not getting paid enough. Yeah. Because he has to take pride in seeing it. So he will go that extra step because he knows that his name's on it, which is like shows a lot of like honor that this guy has. And I love James. And that's why when I had this idea for the show, he built my puppet, Phineas, for the show I'm trying to develop called The Show Me Show. Yeah. And that's Phineas right there. And it could be for kids with autism and special needs, because Bear had all these fans, including parents of kids with autism and special needs, and they've written to me and said that, you know, we love the show. It's still a go-to. We still have like the DVD or even the VHS of shows, and a lot of the kids that grew up are, you know, adults now, but it's still a nice, calming kind of safe haven to go to. And I realized there's no show like that on the air right now. And there's not going to be one anytime soon. So that's why I'm trying to develop it. So that's why on YouTube, there's the Show Me Show channel. And I put up these little videos. There's the Patreon account, so you can be a proud patron. And this week, we've just opened the Show Me Show store.
Ooh, I like that.
Nice, like this wonderful mug.
Yeah.
Just put your coffee in.
Yeah. I remember when you first posted about that, and before I even looked too much into it, I just saw the title of the show, and I was like, "Oh, what a great idea!" Well, to talk about more about how you came up with that and started developing it.
Actually, it was actually way back in like 2000, and I had gotten this development deal with this kids network. It was like before PBS Kids Sprout. It was like another network, and it was between. I came up with this show about, you know, early childhood education, and it was called The Show Me Show, and it was like vaudeville style. I always had this, and it came down between me and this other show, and this other show got it. And the other show was Jack's Big Music Show, which was developed by David Rudman. So then I got to keep like The Show Me Show. So I've had it all this time. And then when I started getting these letters, it made me think like, well, what kind of show could I do? Kids with autism and special needs. And that's when I thought back to The Show Me Show. And it's like, kids learn by being shown like what to do and how to do it. And so with the title still worked, like the Show Me Show. And for kids with autism and special needs, stuff that we take for granted is a little harder for them. It's like social cues. And so just that reinforcement, as well as dealing with change. So just having the characters be able to do that for them would be great. And my goal is to actually have it be a series that you could download and then own, because the way it'd be set up is that the guest star is either a sound, a shape, a number, or an emotion. So say the special guest star is the number 3 or the sound of laughter. Then Phineas would like, because he loved words, would like to do like a play about the number 3. His sister Taylor, who loves dancing and singing, who loves singing, would like to do like a song about the number 3. So since you've downloaded it, you get to choose either Phineas or Taylor. So if you click on Phineas, then the show goes off in that direction with that storyline. Then you can come back, and now you can download. Now you can click on Taylor, and then the same show will now go off in this direction with a different storyline, but still with the same social curriculum, as well as the number 3, or whatever the guest star was. And it can be done. So that's the goal. So just getting exposure and getting attention. And I'd like to do it also at the University of North Texas, because they have a working studio there. You could do it all there. In fact, the whole idea of having you choose, I ran this by James Martin. He's like, yeah, you could do that. So it would actually be done at the University of North Texas and on site. And one of the consultants that has signed on is the Kristen Farmer Autism Center, which is on campus. And they love the idea. And so they would be a part of the show. So it would be a win-win for UNT.
Yeah, no, I really hope that they do it, because it sounds like a perfect connection. And I think it'd be great for them to be connected to that kind of a show with such a strong message.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, there's like no show like that right now. So it's open. So spread the word, retweet. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram. So
so obviously you're looking for like investors or for it to be picked up and produced. So what exactly is it that you're doing with it on your own now? So I know you said little videos for YouTube and stuff. What exactly is the show right now then?
The show right now is like the little videos, and I'm just letting people know about it. So doing wonderful podcasts and blogs and the social media, and going to cons and like introducing the concept in the show. And it's just interesting. A couple of cons, people have come up to me and said, oh yes, I've seen it online. Oh yes, someone told me about this, between like the parent groups. So it's like, so word is getting out there. So hopefully like maybe the right people will see it. And eventually, like, a lovely streaming service would be great if they want to.
Oh yeah,
do it. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Even it could be, it's not just Netflix. There's also Hulu. There's YouTube now as well. Has YouTube originals. So again, fingers crossed. So just keep telling people about it. So
we will do.
Yeah,
That's
and
awesome.
certainly people here maybe hearing it for the first time will, include all the links and stuff for people to be able to go and learn more.
Yeah, and I have many puppet friends. Like one of the videos I did was the guest star was the shape of birds. So my friends who are the puppets and puppeteers of Bird Call.
Oh yes.
Orlando, they did a little segment for me. So
great.
I'll be asking other friends of mine with puppets.
Collaboration. Reach out. That's right.
Maybe they'd like to contribute
something.
That's right.
Who do we know who have puppets, Adam?
We know a lot of people.
I'm seeing a whole cast right behind you there. So
love it. One thing before we start wrapping up a little bit, I'm really interested in talking about your work with Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, and and specifically, I think that's a really great example that like you and James and some of those other folks have, and I imagine creating a relationship with that production team, because I imagine they work on very tight deadlines. You're maybe only finding about work within that week, and you guys time after time are able to just show up and get it done, which is such an important thing for puppeteers to learn to do. So can you talk about how that relationship started and what you do to continue to make sure that that's something that both you and the client are happy with the final product of?
Sure. I don't make any of the puppets. The majority of them have been made by Bob Flanagan, who was one of the puppet builders and special effect costumers for Saturday Night Live for many, many years. And so Bob built a lot of these things. The very first year, last week tonight, Stephanie DeBruzzo called me and said, "No, you're free this weekend to work on Last Week Tonight." I was like, "Sure." And it was a puppet segment. It was a puppet segment about prison reform. And they were doing a parody on this segment that was done on Sesame Street. And so with these puppets thinking about prison reform. And up until the show had been on for like about 6 months. And they'd never done anything like this before. And so we came in that Saturday to kind of like do like a little talk through and like work with the puppets. And John came in. And we like read it with him, and he loved it. And so then the next day we went in and rehearsed it, and we did it. And then since then, they just love the whole. I called John Oliver's show "If 60 Minutes Met Monty Python," because it's really informative, but it then has this weird little angle to it that they always do. And so then they started calling me in to do other puppet characters. Normally like big puppet characters like Jeff, the diseased lung and a yellow cowboy hat, and the polar bear getting a colonoscopy. And then like the latest one was Mr. Nuttabutter, which was this giant talking squirrel. And then like last season was Gritty Kavanaugh. So it was a combination of the Gritty hockey mascot and Kavanaugh from the Supreme Court. But they've always done like weird little stuff like that. And what's great is my goal is, because we do a run through with John before we do it with the audience. Yeah. And my goal is, can I get John to laugh? And if I can do that, then like, okay, if he'll laugh at this, then guaranteed the audience will laugh at it. And so when I did Mr. Nuttabutter for the very first time and came out and did, because the way it was built, I could actually put my hand in the head for the mouth, but I could actually control the head. So I jerked the head around like the way a squirrel would and like scurried over and just up that. And he just lost it. He couldn't talk because I just kept jerking the head to the camera, looking at him, and he just lost it. And I was like, yes. And so, yeah, so in an interview he did, he said they asked him about the weird characters and all that. He said, generally it's done by this guy named Noel. And when it comes to Mr. Nuttabutter, he is Mr. Nuttabutter. So that was really nice. And it's always gratifying. Oh, John knows my name. It's just like, it's every time he sees me, he says, hello, Noel. But the fact he mentioned it in an article, it's like every time I saw Jim and Frank and they would say, oh, hello, Noel. It's like, it's like, hey, Jim. I was like, oh my God, you still remember who I am? Like squealing inside. Yeah. So, and then, so it's great. And then the end of last season, they did this whole parody of like a Fast and Furious kind of parody with these wax figures of presidents that they gotten and trying to like puppeteer them. So they asked me to come in and consult with them and like how to do it. We did it first with just the Harding puppet. And then after that, like coming in and like, okay, we need a rod here, but we could take it out to put one here. And I worked with the guy that they hired who could do that. So they're very respectful of the fact that we don't know how to do this. It's like, you know how to do this. Show us how this can be done.
Yeah. So it should always be.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, you do that. And I will always like, because that's the thing I always tell puppeteers when I'm training them is that it's like, if a director or some says, can you do this? You have the right to say no, but you have to have something better. And if you don't, you just have to try and do it. And if it doesn't look good, then that's it. But you just can't say no without coming up with something better.
Yeah, no, and I think even something, obviously the puppets that you guys did for the prison reform thing, that's something separate, but that you're able to kind of make your mark and leave an indent on someone like John Oliver by adding those extra character flares, because there's nothing stopping them necessarily from just throwing one of their writers in a mascot costume, but that they know that you guys are reliable and that you'll add that level that only a puppeteer can, I think is really, really important, and it's a testament to the work that you guys do.
When we did the prison reform one, for the I saved it for when the audience was there. So there's like this one character's crocodile, and John keeps keeps saying it's an alligator, and he's like, I'm a crocodile. It's like, and pretty much how we all look alike. This crocodile's about to go into this little rant about how we all look alike. And it's like, crocodile, is that what you think? And then I had my character, the monster goes like, oh Jesus, here we go. And I could see John bite his lip from trying not to laugh. Being HBO, I could have the puppet saying, oh Jesus, here we go. And he really had to not laugh. Go to YouTube, you'll see.
Yeah.
That's
and he really is nice. People say, is he nice? He's the nicest guy. He is so funny. He's so smart, and he is truly nice. He really is.
Wow. That's great. When now, just out of curiosity, when you guys do this, you, James, and Stephanie, are you guys working under a company name when they hire you, or do they hire you each as independent contractors?
Yeah, they just hire us. Well, we're all members of SAG-AFTRA, so we're like, on air talent.
So we get dressing rooms, so we get craft service, and
but when something is made, that's when their contract, like whenever Bob would make something, or James has made. Foytal's made a couple of things, and so he's on a independent contract for that. But then he will get paid as a performer under like the union rules and all that for the contract. So.
Yeah, I'm always just interested when these kind of companies, whether they just hire a company like Monkey Boys, or if they just hire, kind of independent people to do it. Just interesting. That's cool though. I'm glad that they're doing it that way. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's never been consistent. Like sometimes Bob will do it, or somebody else will do it. Or there's one time Bob was available, so like James did it. So, but then they have like go-tos that they can, and they know that the quality is there. So there was like one guy who, I forget his name, but he made these puppets for Stephanie and I, and it was like the puppets looked beautiful, but they were really stiff, and so it's like puppet making wasn't really his first ability. He knew how to do it, so it was like the master just said. So I said, you don't mind if I really as I'm holding, you don't mind if I really just loosen this, do you? And in front of them. Like really just like ripping it to try and get the mouth to open up and close. Yes. Adam would never do that, by the way.
Oh, no, never at all. No. Yeah, well, we talk about it all the time, about the difference between puppet being built by someone who understands performing versus just like, I feel like sometimes they'll just hire someone who's a really good artist or a really good costumer. Like, oh, it's close enough to puppet building. They should be able to make something nice. And they do build something that maybe looks beautiful, stunning. But then again, you get it on, it's more of a sculpture that you're trying to, force a performance out of.
Right. This is a statue that you're trying to have me perform.
A beautiful statue, but not a great puppet necessarily.
No, not at all. So so this was I think Bob's crowning achievement when we did these like government mascots, and so you had to make all these mascots, and they were just ridiculous. And so, but they were comfortable. So because he understood like he had to be inside. So, and Bob is great. Bob also did. Paul McGinnis and I got to work on the Wiz live, and so Bob did the giant head of the Wiz that the characters encounter, which was kind of like puppeteering a piano at the end of a flagpole, but
we did it because it was very top heavy, but we did it.
Yeah.
Holy cow!
Now, what were the controls like for that? Was it like mostly mechanical stuff? That
we were underneath, and Paul and I were facing each other, and I could do the head, and I could control the head and the mouth on one pole. We both had these like soccer gloves on so that we could really grip this. And Paul could do the eyelids and the eyes, so he could make them go back and forth and make the eyelids go. And I could raise and lower the head, turn it, and then also literally like crank the mouth open and close.
Oh boy.
And so and then it was doing it live to Queen Latifah's voice, and so working out the timing with her and all that. So But it was fun. It was great. It was a great production. It was an amazing production. It was really good. But yeah, puppets come in all shapes, all sizes, all weights. But it just comes down to just like being able to do this
Yeah.
level.
Puppetry has changed so much over, even our lives, but certainly over the course of time that you've been working at it. And I'm so intrigued by the way that you're innovating with the Show Me Show and doing like choose your own adventure type things. Where do you see puppetry being able to go? What is its strength moving forward into a time when there's all these other sort of ways of doing things, other kinds of competition, CGI, animation, all sorts of things. What do you see as puppetry's place in media moving forward?
Oh, I still see it as a place. There's room for it. It's like when producers, want to choose it because they think it's cheaper. And it's like, CGI, or it's like, no, it's not cheaper. In fact, sometimes it's more expensive. But it's like marrying them together, making sure it works. Like, Sid the Science Kid and John Tartaglia's show, like, Bubbles. Like, that's when you have like the computer generated character, but it actually is being puppeteered. So it has like a character to it. And then my show, like the Show Me Show, is, you could probably call it old school, but actually having the puppets like right there. So there's still room for that. I mean, the fact that, Sesame Street's about to celebrate its 50th year shows that, it's still relevant. I just wish that puppets got a little more of the respect here that they do in Europe, because other countries actually respect like the history and the culture that puppets can be used, not just for teaching how to count to 10, but also to be used in other aspects. So, but you just get used to that. So it's like,
Right. Yeah.
but when you get to work on a show like John Oliver, and they respect like who you are and what can be done, and you can make them laugh and prove that, oh yeah, we were right. To get Noel, yeah, look at that. So
Yeah.
it's good. So there is still room for puppets, all kinds of puppets, and it's going to be interesting how it was. I think it's very interesting with the last Star Wars movies that they went back to practical special effect puppets as opposed to the whole computer generated stuff, because there is, when you use it too much, there's something lacking in it. It's not the same thing. There's that great picture of, George Lucas, at the end of like, the Star Wars, the original saga, and he's got all the models and all like the droids behind him. And then you've got him after the new trilogy, and he's against a green screen and there's nothing behind him. And you could just tell, it's just not the same. So the fact that there was a conscious effort by J.J. Abrams to go back and just have that, and you can tell the difference, because that is the Star Wars universe. Like, you look at the stuff, it's like, yes, that's an actual, thing that's slurping water out of that's the whole cantina scene, 2.0 with those characters and those puppeteers, and it just made a difference. And when The Force Awakens, when I saw Yoda, I teared up because I realized it's Yoda. It's Frank and the puppet again. And I teared up. And apparently Mark Hamill did the same thing during rehearsal. Like when he saw Yoda again with Frank, he just teared up because that's the character we remember. Not this little parkour, Keebler elf from the new trilogy.
This is what we remember.
This parkour Keebler elf. Yeah, I mean, it is such a difference, because I even heard from the original, or not the original, I'm sorry, the episodes 1, 2, 3. I don't know for all of them, but I know at least for one of those episodes, they didn't even make one stormtrooper armor. It was all CGI.
Yeah.
What a difference. Not even one set of that armor in there never existed. It was all completely CGI, which is just wild to think about, especially compared to where it came from with the original 4, 5, 6 series, where there was nothing.
Yeah.
Not every single little thing. Again, that was the time, but
I think it shows a lot of the fact that, this is what Lucas really wanted all along. He wanted to be able to just do it like that himself, not be bothered with actors he didn't need, which was a lot of lack of respect for the people that, actually did it for him in the first place. I remember back when he was on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, and he was saying to Jon Stewart that, the new trilogy has the same affection that the original trilogy had for this new generation. And Jon Stewart said, I know, my son is 9. And he says to me, Dad, The Phantom Menace is the best movie ever. And I keep telling him, no, it's not. And the entire audience just like goes wild and applauds. And they cut to George Lucas, and he just has this face of like, I don't give a flying F because I'm rich. And I don't care what you think.
Yeah. He's crying all the way to the bank.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's what happened. It's like he didn't care anymore. It's like, no. So
yeah, well, I guess in a way he may have been just thinking like they just want Star Wars, so let's just make them something. Like clearly he didn't think he maybe needed to put as much into it as he possibly did the first time. And I think that in a way that's kind of what happens to a lot of shows and stuff. Is like in a way nothing's ever as good as the original, or the sequel is almost never as good as the original in a way. But this is to an extreme. Yeah,
I love Patton Oswalt's whole little diatribe, like common routine about like Star War, and I love that. So again, kids, Google it. Go to YouTube.
Yeah. Well, another thing too is like I believe for the 1, 2, 3 of Star Wars, I think they actually did do Yoda as a puppet when it came out in theaters, but then for the DVDs they CGI'd over the puppet.
Wow.
There's some side-by-side thing you can see on YouTube that obviously for the Parkour Keebler Elf part, that was not a puppet. But yeah, I was surprised. And then looking back, they went over it. Well, I guess they did that with the other stuff too. They went over Jabba and stuff. And
yeah, you can tell the difference. This is like, don't do that.
Not only that, I hear people talk about like you're literally going over, especially for the old one, where they went over Jabba and stuff. You're covering up award-winning effects.
Yeah,
like those people won awards for that, and now in this new version, it's completely gone.
Right, and again, it goes back to my thing about George Lucas' blatant disrespect for the people who did it for him originally. I only had you do it because this wasn't available yet. As soon as it is, I'll get rid of it. And it's the blatant disrespect on his part. So
it's funny because I thought about that a lot, and I go back and forth on it too, because in a one way it's like it's his art, this was his idea. Why can't it be done the way that he wants? Why can't it be seen the way he wants it to be seen?
Right.
But again, I think we just answered that question as well because of all the artists that worked on it before, and then again literally award-winning things that they did, and then just have that all be erased. So it's tough. It's weird. But
it's a crazy debate.
It is.
Well, Noel, as we begin to wrap up, we'll ask you the question that we ask everyone who comes on the show, in the spirit of our good friend Jim Krupa, who always has some crazy puppeteer stories of when things didn't go right on set at the time, but now you could kind of look back with hindsight and laugh about it. If you have any good puppeteer stories that you could share with us before we go.
Oh, good.
Yeah. You've been part of other people's puppeteer stories, but we can't wait to hear yours.
Right, yes. This is like good puppet. It's like there's so this they just run the gamut of it. It's like when because the great thing with Bear was that Bear could actually go into the real world, and Bear was also an adult, which is very rare for a puppet on a kids show. He was an adult character, so he actually could go on shows like Hollywood Squares and be a little cheeky sometimes. And so one time I was on back when he had the show, Wayne Brady, and Wayne Brady's a great guy, and I was on his daytime show, and did the segment with him to promote the new DVDs were coming out. And then after the commercial, I'm going to come back and do a wrap up with a song with him. In between that, they wanted to do promos, to have Wayne do promos. And so I'm off to the side, still in Bear, waiting for him. And he's doing these promos in a row. And he finally says to them, guys, can we hurry this up? It's getting hot in this suit. And I had Bear yell over, "Oh, really? Are you getting hot in your suit?" And he starts laughing, and Bear walks out and puts his arm around him. And it's like, I'll just do it now. It's like Bear walks out, puts his arm around Wayne Brady, look into the camera and say, "Control room, record, and 3, 2. Hi, I'm Bear in the Big Blue House. This is my friend Wayne Brady. Want to have a good time? Tune into the Wayne Brady Show. Check your local listings." And then that was it.
Oh my God.
I don't know if they ever used it, but that was like,
Yeah.
it was great. So Bear could like do stuff like that, and there was like another time where I did an appearance on British television, the Tea Time with Gloria Honeyford, and it was to promote the new DVDs. And at that time, the Bear Cha 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 had been officially taken by the British Heart Association as a good form of exercise, and was going to come out and actually do it with her. Before we do that, and this is live on afternoon television, and my wife is in the hotel watching this, and she says the British Heart Association has embraced the Bear Cha Cha Cha. It's a good exercise for our children. Do you think, Bear, the government is doing enough to help the children in this country? And I'm inside in a microsecond thinking, are you actually trying to ambush a talking bear about the politics of the British Parliament on live television? Are you that desperate for ratings? And Bear said, I was like, well, I think there's more we can all do, not just the government, but everyone out there, you, Gloria, me, to help kids be more active and excellent, which is why we're going to do the Bear Cha 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 right now. And just like, it's like one of those little things.
Pivot.
Pivot. Dance, tap dance.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's like stuff that happens. So yeah, but it's great. I wouldn't trade it. I'm still trying to do it. So
Yeah, awesome. Great.
And thanks for having me on to blather on about it.
No, absolutely.
Yeah,
What's the best way for people to follow the work that you're doing and to follow the Show Me Show and everything?
Like I said, we're on I'm on Twitter. I'm also on Instagram. The Show Me Show is on Twitter at Noel Your Host, and it's on Instagram at The Show Me Show. There's a Facebook page. There's the Patreon account. So you go to patreon.com/The Show Me Show. You can be part of the show. And on YouTube, there's the Show Me Show channel. And now on Zazzle, there's the Show Me Show store. And the portions of that go towards the production of it. And you can also email me any questions at noelandtheshowmeshow@gmail.com.
Nice. Awesome.
Love it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All that information's right in
Down
front of you
there.
now. Yeah.
Go down there.
And
Down.
that's great. So as we close, we want to thank our Patreon patrons for supporting Puppeteers Pod. If you're interested in joining our group of patrons, you could go to patreon.com/puppeteers. And thank you to all who've given so far. And Noel MacNeal, thank you so much for spending time with us on Puppeteers. It was so good to get to know you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was great.
Yeah.
I have to thank my son for letting me use his room because it's like the quietest room in the house when he's not.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, that's why we have like the Funko, the Pops in the back, and like the Disney pictures. So
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because like Peter Linz's room was also full of toys and things like that, but I don't think that was his
That was
kid's
his
room.
own.
That was his
Yeah.
own room. Yeah.
his kids are in high school and college. No, that's all Peter's. So,
That's all Peter's. That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Peter does not share.
Yeah.
That's right. But that's great. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Noel. This was great. Especially thanks for coming on so last minute
Yeah.
and everything. And yeah, this is awesome. Cool. Thanks.
Cool.
All right.
Yeah,
Bye.
come
Noel.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
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 Many thanks to our newest Patreon patrons, Stephanie Sachs, Lewis Morin, and Justin Robertson. Learn how you can support the show by visiting patreon.com/puppeteerspod to pledge your support today. Thanks for watching and listening each week.